Hi everyone, this is Lindsay Avalon, and as I mentioned in my very first video, I want to discuss one of the problems that I've had to deal with pretty much my entire life, which is having a sensory processing disorder. It wasn't until I was in college that I really understood what was going on, and it can be kind of hard to explain to people what actually happens. My main issues have to do with how I process sound and sensations, and a lot of it is tied to having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I know what some of you may think, that is actually an incredibly overdiagnosed disorder, but believe it or not, I do actually have it. I have been diagnosed with it since I was 10. Um, I can be the poster child for hyperactivity when I have not taken my medication, and it has gotten at times to the point where my test scores and even my IQ has drastically been different when I am medicated and unmedicated because I'm actually able to focus. When I'm not medicated, and to a degree when I am, I will have a lot of problems processing speech. The best way to describe it is that I can hear volume perfectly fine. If you're talking to me, I know you're talking to me. I can hear it just fine in terms of the volume. But my brain will randomly start scrambling speech, and I will just hear gibberish. When I was in college, I actually discovered that it was called auditory processing disorder. I passed every hearing test and continue to pass every hearing test because they just do those, obnoxious little tones. And that's never been a problem for me. But if somebody's talking to me and I'm not looking at them and partially lip reading to get the full context of what they're saying, something that sounds to the normal person completely, intelligible, to me it sounds like gibberish. I will hear the complete wrong word. I will hear something that literally just comes out as blah, blah, blah. It's the best way I can describe it. And it sounds really funny, but it's actually incredibly frustrating. My personal rule of thumb is I give it 3 attempts, and if by the 3rd attempt of having somebody repeat themselves, I can't understand, I just kind of pretend and take my best stab at what they've said. And it's actually bitten me hard sometimes. When I've thought somebody was, asking me if I wanted to go somewhere, and I said sure. Turns out they weren't asking me to do anything at all, and I get a really weird, embarrassed laugh from the person because they have no idea what I'm talking about. I unfortunately can feel very isolated in noisy settings because no matter how hard I try, it sounds like somebody's speaking a foreign language. And if I can't look at somebody directly, or if there's a lot of background noise, I just lose entire parts of the conversation. So while I can be very social in environments like, crowded bars, at conventions when there's a lot of people, or even just in an office setting where there's, a bunch of different conversations going on, it doesn't matter how loud you are being with me, you could be shouting at me and I will not understand it. It's incredibly frustrating because people don't understand. My husband, it drives him insane because if he's not looking directly at me, I have a really hard time. And it can get very frustrating when you have to repeat yourself, 4, 5, 6 different times before I can actually understand it. One thing I've tried to tell people is if I ask them to repeat themselves and I'm still not getting it, to rephrase it. A lot of times just using a different word that has approximately the same meaning can make all the difference for me with understanding it. I interpret sounds a little bit different, so certain sounds which to the normal person don't really bother them, like chewing, is one of the big ones for me. It's like nails on a chalkboard. It's horrendous. And certain other sounds, certain frequencies for sounds, higher pitched sounds, they're actually physically painful to me. I will just kind of hunch into myself, cover my ears, and it can get really embarrassing because I'll do this at work. And I'm helpless because it's an automatic reaction because it's just so painful for me. I have always had some sort of level of tinnitus. The easiest way to describe the frequency that I hear at all times is if you go out on YouTube and look up like Call of Duty, a flashbang. That ringing that you hear after, a flashbang goes off is somewhat the sound that I hear at all times. I do not know what silence is. So for me, being in a totally quiet room is, torture, because nothing can drown out that ringing. At the same time, being in a noisy room, as I've said, can be just as torturous because I can't understand anything anybody's saying to me. So growing up, I adored music because music drowned out the tinnitus, and it gave me an excuse for why I couldn't understand what somebody has said to me. And admittedly, sometimes I will have my headphones on, not have music on, but pretend I was listening to music because it gives me an excuse to have somebody repeat themselves. I tend to listen to very loud, fast-paced music because it drowns out the tinnitus a little bit better. At night, I have to listen to a fan, or I have a cute little stuffed dolphin that makes ocean sounds because the wave sound can help drown out the tinnitus and help me fall asleep. So all these like little auditory quirks I've had to live with. I also have tactile problems. Certain fabrics can just be like the worst thing possible for me. I am very tactile sensitive. I cannot stand cotton balls. It made me so happy when a lot of over-the-counter medicine companies quit putting cotton in the bottles because I would have to use tweezers to pull it out. Because even now, just picturing it, that feeling of the cotton like crunching, it's like it's horrible. It puts my teeth on edge. It's making me tense up. It makes me really anxious, and I just can't stand it. Some of the other things that tactilely I've had problems with is if somebody's touching me and they're using a very light touch, just like brushing against you. If somebody does that to me for more than about 5 seconds in the same spot, it begins to feel like I'm being rubbed with sandpaper. Very, very uncomfortable. And it's been a problem in relationships just because that's a common thing for people to do. You hold hands, you rub the back of your hand. For me, it's painful. And I can't stand it. So I would pull away from people. I wouldn't like to be touched, even by my own family. And it was embarrassing. I've also discovered that part of my problems with that have to do with my chronic inflammation due to an autoimmune disorder called Sjogren's, which causes widespread inflammation, particularly in the joints and particularly in mucosal membranes. So I have problems with dry eyes. For the past 2 years, I haven't been able to wear contacts because my eyes have just been too dry. I get dry mouth, my skin's really dry, my lips are really dry. I am literally addicted to chapstick and lotion to the point where if I don't have at least like 3 sticks, either in my purse, in my pockets, in my car, I will go crazy. And my friends have laughed at me when I'm in a grocery store and I'm trying to buy more chapstick because they feel like they need to cut me off, and I need to go to a 12-step program for chapstick addictions. I have also been known to race into a gas station or something to try to find chapstick or a tiny little bottle of lotion. If I'm in a store and my hands are just getting to me and there happens to be a little lotion at the counter when you go to check out, it is everything. I have to do everything I can in my power not to just like take it, open it, and put it on my hands because I'm going insane. For me, torture would be not like, being physically tortured with, you know, whipping, stuff like that, beating, anything like that. It would be taking away lotion and chapstick. Those are my two big ones. I also have problems with certain environments when it comes to light. I cannot handle backlit screens in a dark room. This has caused a little bit of friction with my husband because I managed to marry a vampire who loves being in the dark and watching TV in the dark. And we get into arguments sometimes about me wanting to have a light on and he wanting to have it dark. So that can get a little interesting. It can trigger migraines for me, which is always a fun thing to have. And I'm lucky, though, that in terms of the visual sensory problems, that's really the only one that I have. For the other senses, there's not really a problem. My main ones just are auditory and tactile. Like I said, a lot of it is tied to my ADD. When I'm medicated, I'm able to focus on other things when it starts to get to me, so it doesn't bother me quite as much, but it is something that never truly goes away. I suffer from anxiety, so the sensory process problems have really kind of amplified the anxiety and vice versa. I go into sensory overload where I want to retreat. I can't stand having anything touch me. My clothes will hurt. Everything will just hurt. If I have a fever, like just barely brushing against my hair, not even like, pulling on it, but just like kind of like brushing like this, that actually hurts. And it sounds ridiculous, even as I say it, but it's true. Just brushing against my skin like this will cause me physical pain. And I'm lucky that it actually has happened to my mom with that, because I didn't feel totally insane growing up. But when I've tried to explain to people that I can't stand to have them touch me because I'm having a low-grade fever, a lovely side effect of having an autoimmune disorder that causes inflammation, by the way, I get the weirdest looks, because apparently it's not a common thing for somebody's skin to hurt just brushing against it. So it wasn't until college that I started to discover that my problems with hearing, with comprehending speech and stuff like that, wasn't just, some strange thing in my head, that it actually was a condition. I have not formally been diagnosed with it, but I have pretty much all of the symptoms, and it explains a lot of what used to happen. So I encourage you to look it up. It's a very interesting disease. When I hear the complete wrong word, it can actually be kind of funny, but it usually happens at inopportune times. A couple of things that I have learned over time that can help is weighted blankets. They are used a lot of times for autistic and Asperger's children, which, if you've ever seen an autistic child having a fit where they're just screaming, or they're banging their head, or they're engaging in some sort of self-injurious behavior, a lot of times it's because they are experiencing complete sensory overload. Unfortunately for autistic or Asperger's child, it's very, very easy for them to get overloaded, especially with just emotional input, things like that. But they can have a lot of the same problems with sensory issues. And a lot of times what they're doing is giving themselves something to focus on other than the sensors that are overloading them. Causing pain releases endorphins, which make you feel better. Same concept as when you're really, really angry and you punch a wall, or you dig your nails into your hand and you start to feel a little better. You start to feel a little bit more clear-headed. It's released those endorphins in your brain, gives you something to focus on. So one thing I learned was it is not uncommon for ADD children and adults to have these same sensory issues. It's just not something that's very commonly diagnosed. It's not something that is in the official DSM criteria that psychiatrists use to form diagnoses. So unfortunately, even though it can really interfere with everything from school to social lives, it's not something that by itself is usually diagnosed. I am highly intelligent, but in school, as a result of my issues with comprehending speech, a lot of times I just didn't pay attention to lectures because if there was any kind of background noise, be it rustling of papers, talking, even a particularly loud furnace, I just couldn't understand the teacher, and I would give up and just not listen to him at all. Luckily, I am smart enough that I was able to get by on tests and things like that just fine. But for a lot of children who have sensory problems, school is just horrendous. And I personally never liked school because you can't escape those sensory overload problems when you're in a classroom with 25 other kids. So as I said, a weighted blanket really helps. It's the same concept as thunder shirts for dogs. The compression and the weight really help. It gives you something to focus on, gives your mind something to focus on so that you can start to try to filter out some of those aggravating factors that are getting to you. I'm going to include in the description a link to this amazing woman who made me my weighted blanket that saved my sanity in a lot of ways. It's really helped me sleep better. It's when I get really anxious, I wrap it around myself, and it is just completely wonderful. There's no way to really describe how it makes you feel. And I even have one that I keep at work that is a smaller version that I can put over my shoulders, and it helps me just focus on things. And I'm pretty open at work that I do have these problems, so when they see me with this shawl on, they just kind of roll with it, or I just say that I'm cold or something like that. But the precise weight of it really, really helps. So my blanket is actually weighed at 12 pounds. They usually recommend that you go for about 10% of your body weight. And it's a full-length blanket. I highly recommend it if anybody has any kind of anxiety. I don't say that it will completely eradicate anxiety. I don't say that it's a replacement for medication or anything like that, but it definitely can assist. So I do have it right here. On one side, I have lovely Mickey Mouse fabric, and on the other side, sorry, my dog is lying on it, I have a cute little owl. And I don't know if it's going to come across on the YouTube station, but there's little pellets inside of it. So as I said, this one's weighted for 12 pounds. The one I have at work is weighted at about 7 pounds. And, you know, if you have any kind of anxiety, I really recommend getting one. She doesn't make these to make a profit off of them. She does it to help people. So even if you don't plan on getting one, please go to her Facebook page and like it, and you know, share her page so that she can help even more people. That's just a little bit about my sensory issues. If you have any questions, please let me know. I try to be very open about that sort of thing because it's one of those lesser known problems that a lot of people actually have. They think they're crazy, they think it's all in their head, and it really isn't. For me, having tinnitus, I thought silence, you always heard some sort of ringing, and it stunned me to realize that that's not actually silence. I still don't know what true silence is. I've never not had tinnitus, but at least I now know it's not normal. So if you've liked this, please like this video, subscribe, and like I said, please go to that link. I will also have links so that you can friend me on Facebook, like my author page, all of that. Feel free to you know, chat with me. I'm most active on Facebook. And please leave comments or questions or anything that you'd like me to talk about in the future. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.